Hi everyone. In this video, we are making a gyoza illustration. This will be the 7th painting in the food illustration series in which I'll make different food-related paintings in alphabetic order. So let's get started. For the first layer of gyoza, do a light wash of yellow ochre. And while it's still wet, add a mixture of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and just a tiny bit of cadmium red at the bottom to suggest that it has been fried. Here I'm using 2 paint brushes, smaller one to add the burnt sienna mixture, and little bit larger for the yellow ochre wash. Now I'm going to repeat the same process for others, and I'm adding the burnt sienna mix to capture the classic yaki gyoza style, as this is one of the popular styles in Japan. And yaki just means pan-fried. And this method perfectly balances textures by pan-frying the bottom for a crispy crust, then steaming the dumpling to ensure the tops remain soft and juicy. I'm using a dilute mixture of yellow ochre as I want it to be lighter initially, and we will darken some of the areas later in the next layers. This is a simple step, but if your layer dries before you've blended the burnt sienna mixture properly, maybe you added too much or not enough, don't worry about it at all. That's what the next layers are for. The most important thing here is that you're learning something new and enjoying the process. Just remember to be kind to yourself. As I add in this darker tone, I'm aiming for random organic patterns. Doing it wet on wet will allow the color to spread unevenly, and this will make each dumpling feel more natural and give us that varied textured surface. Here I felt that this dumpling is a bit dark, so I'm lifting some of the paint with a clean, damp brush. And I'm doing this from the top section because I want that to be lighter. This is a crucial watercolor concept. While you can always add more paint later, but taking it away can be much harder. And that's why we mostly start with light layers. However, if you feel you have painted too dark, you can usually lift it up. But if it's hard to lift, it might be because of the paper quality. That's why it's always recommended to invest in some decent quality paper. While this is drying, let's do the first layer for the sauce. And for that, I'll use a mixture of cadmium red and burnt umber. Here, I'm using a negative painting technique to paint around the cilantro. And while this is drying, I'll paint the chopsticks with yellow ochre. And I also added some cadmium yellow to them. Let everything dry completely. Then to paint the plate, prepare a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Assuming the light source is towards the top left, I'll keep the plate darker towards the left. This is because the plate has a raised edge which will block the light on the left, and it will be brighter on the right side. Before painting the plate around the dumplings, make sure everything is completely dry. Here I applied a little bit of water on the left before adding the pigment. The key here is to paint both sides of the plate simultaneously because we don't want the paint to dry to avoid harsh edges. So we'll move back and forth so that we can continue painting while the paint is still wet to get a smoother wash. You should prepare more paint than you think you might need because here we need to be very quick painting around the dumplings and making sure the paint does not dry on any of the sides. If we don't prepare paint in advance and we ran out of it, it will be very hard to make the paint of same consistency and color. And if you want a smoother wash, you can't let that paint dry while continuing downwards. Don't worry if you are left with some of it in the end. You can use it in any other painting or in your watercolor exercises. And here I'm using a medium consistency paint. Test it on a scrap piece of paper because after you start and it's thicker than you like, you can't add water on the paper or a dilute version of the paint because if you do that, there are high chances it'll cause blooms. Painting this plate was my favorite part of the painting. This process is so relaxing. You have to be quick and focused so it clears your mind. It helps you empty your thoughts. And the most important thing, it helped the gyoza to pop forward. Remember to move back and forth. For example, start from left, then move on to the right side, then back to the left. If you are only focused on one side of the plate, you may not get desirable results. Here I'm keeping the color light to represent the light reflection. Now, while this is drying, I'm going to paint cilantro with sap green. I'm also adding some in those spots where I didn't left unpainted space. These might appear a bit muted and will suggest that they are submerged in the sauce. Now, to make rim of the bowl, I'm using burnt umber and also leaving some highlights. After the plate has been completely dried, I'm adding just a little bit of water and darkening it from here like this. Now, let everything dry completely. Then apply clean water on the sauce, and then do another layer with this red mixture. I'm painting over some of the green sections to represent that some of the cilantro pieces are under the sauce and others are not. Now I'll add some details on each gyoza. With a slightly concentrated version of the burnt sienna mixture, I'm adding some squiggly lines. If you feel that the gyoza is a bit light, then you can apply some water here and add a slightly darker value of yellow ochre and burnt sienna mixture. Making the other dumplings in a similar manner.
いたしました。一番線には新浦安南船橋海浜幕張方面外房線快速上総一ノ駅の到着です。この電車は途中後から参ります電車には抜かれずに南船橋海浜幕張蘇我方面まで一番先の到着となります。This is the Sokomo Line Rapid Service Team for 上総一ノ駅。
運賃は事前に両替の上、運賃箱にお入れください。次、止まります。扉が開くまで。次は丸太町七本松、丸太町七本松。次は丸太町七本松、京丹隅、中央図書館、洛和会ヘルスケアシステム、洛和会丸太町病院前です。次、止まります。扉が開くまで、その場でお待ちください。
丸太町一本松。ありがとうございます。
一番線には新浦安南船橋海浜幕張方面外房線快速上総一ノ駅の到着です。この電車は途中後から参ります電車には抜かれずに南船橋海浜幕張蘇我方面まで一番先の到着となります。This is the Sokomo Line Rapid Service Team for 上総一ノ駅。
Now let this dry and move on to the sauce. Apply clean water near the edges here. And then apply cadmium red pale like this to represent a layer of oil. Now make some lines with burnt sienna and Payne's gray mixture for the gyoza folds. Now I'm going to make some soft shadows on the bowl, and for that I'm applying clean water here, then using a mixture of Payne's gray and ultramarine blue. Now make shadows of the dumplings on each other and also on the plate with the same shadow color. Now add some highlights with a white gel pen or some white opaque paint. And then I'm going to add some basic designs on this paper underneath. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like the other tutorials in the food illustration series, so be sure to watch them. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.